Well, good morning. Here we are again. And it seems like so long since Lily and I have done a Facebook Live together. And I am really excited about this. She and I had a phone call a few days ago and we talked about her trip. And oh, wow, I wanted to sit down and spend the whole week with her. So I think we're going to have some great things. In fact, one of the things that it did for me was that it sent me out looking for some of my books on Iona and thinking, we don't have to visit Iona in order to really enjoy it. And these are a couple that I have just loved. In fact, before I let Lily loose, I want to just read a quick part from this book. He says, everything on Iona has a name. Every physical feature of the island has been part of a specific human experience and therefore thought worthy of bearing a name. Gully of Little Brand's Lad, Meadow of the Dead Goose. My map names not only every hillock, hollow, field and cove, but also every private home and shop. This is the product of 5,000 years of human habitation, of course, but also reflects a way of seeing and valuing. These many names are testimony to the human scale of life on Iona. As the scale of physical size diminishes as one travels to the island, England, Scotland, Mull, Iona, the scale of individual and spiritual significance rises. Walking is the maximum desirable speed for seeing things fully enough to name them. And when we name things, then we begin to value them. No wonder that we will all want to be named and known. And I thought that was just a great introduction to what Lily's talking about today. Naming and knowing, I think, is a lot of what she's kind of getting into. And so I just wanted to give her free reign. I might interject a little bit, but
I want you to interject because Iona is a sacred space for you too. It was an amazing trip, and I even met a God Space follower on Iona and in St. Columba's Hotel where we stayed, and that was fun. She's from Scotland herself, so that was really great to meet her. First of all, thin place, finding your thin place. One of the things that happened to me in 2001, Rob and I, my husband and I, had our first trip to the UK ever. Now, you need to know that I was an English lit major and an education major, but that England, somehow, the UK, Britain, was in my soul before I ever got there. And I've done a little bit of research to know that I have some Scotch-Irish roots, but I'd never been. And it was in 2001 that we first heard the word thin place. And so we came back, I think I've told this story before, where we came back from discovering thin place was where heaven and earth felt close, where the veil between heaven and earth touched. And we decided, how do we create that kind of space in our own lives? Because you can't always go on holiday or you can't go on a retreat all the time. So how do you create that in your own space? So we started doing that in our home, and then we named our house church that we created back then, Thin Place. And that's what it still is today in the new iterations that it is now, both on Zoom and in person. It's still called Thin Place. And so one of the things that I told Christine last week that happened for me while I was away was I found an old business card that said, Thin Place, a pilgrimage of discovery and creativity. And that was the name of my business way before free range worship. And what Jesus kind of tapped on my shoulder while I was there was, hey, you need to go back and talk and revisit and reimagine what finding your thin place is all about and what does thin place look like. So I've been dreaming, Christine and I have even started dreaming about how do we do retreats, thin place retreats and soul care kinds of things. So, that's skipping ahead. That was kind of at the end of the week. What I usually say is that God works in the middle of the week. So when I go onto the Abbey of Gethsemane for silence, it usually takes till Wednesday for my brain to shut up, and so I can actually hear from God. And it's kind of the same for, we had a week, we did a 2.5 week trip, and it was in honor of my turning 60 birthday. And it took 2 years to get there because I'd planned on going on this retreat before COVID hit. And so I wanted to give some blurbs to Wild at Art Scotland is the trip that I went on. And Ute is the organizer, and she takes people, it's not a Christian organization, but it's an organization where she's about the land and the artists of Scotland. So she pairs Scotland's artists with places of beauty around, and she does this not just for artists, but for people who want to travel. But specifically, she does it also for Wild at Art Scotland, finding artists who will be our tutors and then putting them in a beautiful place to learn. So this trip, for instead of a pilgrimage in the sense of going with students like I've done before, or going with my family like I did in visiting the Iona community that's based there, this was about art and the beauty of Iona. And that's just what Jesus knew I needed. I needed to have that beautiful space and a place to create, and being with like-minded creative people from all over the world. There were people from Switzerland and from Finland and from the UK, and 5 of us from the States who all pilgrimaged together, met on the Mull ferry, the ferry from Oban to Mull. You have to take a ferry. It really is a pilgrimage to get to Iona, because you train up from Glasgow, then you take the ferry from Oban to Mull, then you take a bus or a taxi, which the taxi ride is something else, or the bus, because it's about a 40-minute ride to the next ferry that you go over to the island of Iona. And the beautiful thing is getting to be there for an entire week. That was the gift. Because you really got to experience the place, and we got to walk. We would walk to a beach and paint there, or collect rocks and stones or the things on the beach that we saw, and then we draw and create from those things. And then the next day we do kind of the similar thing, regardless of the weather. And if Iona is a very small island, like 3 miles, but it has very distinctive places along the way. And the colors, I wanted to share, that was a practice that we did, was looking at the colors on Iona. And our tutor's name is Janet Melrose, and she's an artist in Scotland. And she did a practice throughout COVID that she said helped save her sanity. And every morning she got up and looked out her studio window, and she quickly watercolor painted what the view was, whatever the colors were that she saw, or the mist on the hills or whatever, she painted that. And so she started our class by showing us some of these paintings that she did. And she'd also been a part of going to Iona a long time, even with her family as a kid. So she had done lots of sketches around the island. And one of the first things she gave us was a concertina book, which I had never known, didn't know what one was, but she took a big piece of sheet of paper and cut it up, and it creates a little sketchbook. And so she had us color or draw or sketch along the way the things that we saw each day. And that was great to have a little, we have a little memory book now of the things that we saw. One of the things she had us do was sit outside and listen to the sounds, and what do sounds look like if you were going to we're going to draw sounds. And so for me, it was different colors, and there were bikes along the path. And then there's lots of stone walls. So the stone walls along in both Scotland and Ireland are very beautiful. But so I'm going to learn how to make more of these. I'm not like linear. So it was like, oh, I have to lay out the paper to cut it out. But now I've seen these in art studios where people have done different colors, and they're actually, or you can hang them as a sculpture. So there are a lot of things you can do with a little concertina book. But she had us look at the colors. So later in the week, she had taken these long pieces of cardboard, and she painted them just with gesso, which is a white paint, just to give them a background. And she said, I want you to think back on all the colors you've seen all over the island. And then I want you to create, like, when you go to like Home Depot or Lowe's, and they have all the color swatches that you choose. And she said, paint, what are the colors of Iona to you? So I did kind of just with watercolor, kind of the different colors that I saw. And then I took I had to cut it up because it had to fit in my suitcase to come back home. But these were the swatches of colors, everything from down here. There's really cool colors of stone in the Abbey itself, and then all the way through the grasses in the beach, and then the stones on the other side of the beach. And what I just thought about was, what if every place we went, we did some kind of color swatches, and then maybe a photograph of the place so that you got to remember the colors. And my friend Anya, she goes, oh, well, there's an Instagram like that. And I go, there is? Because I'm an Instagram fan, but I didn't know that this was a thing. So there's a thing called movie color palettes and color of filmmaking. And they take a picture from a movie and then they do the color palette along the bottom of it. But I just have this idea, Christine, of the different places that, you know, like Seattle is one of my favorite places. So having a color swatch of a Seattle and maybe a fairy picture, or, you know, here's Iona, and then other places we visited in Scotland, or Nashville. What are the colors of Nashville? So you could do that wherever you live as a kind of a practice of noticing the colors where you visited or where you live. The other thing that
and
God
name it all.
Yeah. Oh, well, the naming thing, that was the thing. I have always loved about the UK is that places are named, like cottages, or if you go to an Airbnb, it has a specific name, or a B&B. That name, everything has a name because it's been there for so long.
Yep.
And that's the thing that I really, one of the things I value so much is standing in the Iona Abbey and just remembering how long people have prayed there. And there's a cross outside the Abbey where people have prayed for 1,500 years, because if you don't know, St. Columba came to the island in 563 with 12 friends, 12 disciples, and there were already people had been already there. It wasn't like he was the first person to find it, but he left Ireland to start this monastery that ended up changing the whole world, because it ended up being the home of Christianity that moved through northern Scotland and into northern England, thanks to his.
A moment, my dog is calling.
Oh yeah, sure. So the other thing that I'll keep talking while you're gone, Christine.
That's all it takes. You just need to go
out.
out.
Well, the other thing I realized, Christine, is that when I got off the plane in Scotland, you said this on your Meditation Monday, in transitional times, we need to kind of get out of ourselves and get out of our routine and get out of our place. And as an extrovert and a 7 on the Enneagram that likes adventure, you know, because of COVID, all my business stuff had tanked except for what we've done online. But my in-person events that were kind of my bread and butter, hadn't done them since February of 2020. And I used to have a practice of kind of going to the UK to the Greenbelt Festival and things like, and taking people on pilgrimage. And none of that had happened, you know, thanks to COVID. So this was like the first big cross the pond trip since COVID. And it was a big risk for me because I'd been so safe for like 2.5 years, and getting on an airplane is a little bit scary. And plus the numbers in Scotland had been really bad. But I realized that I even said, I felt like the enemy was attacking me that didn't want me to go. And once I got off the plane, it was like, I felt like I was home as soon as I landed in Glasgow. And it was, when I walked into the Abbey that first day, I was like, yeah, I'm supposed to be here. And then thanks to, you know, the Holy Spirit just did a lot of work in me to say, oh, it's time to be reborn again. And I got to do a worship service in the Abbey on Iona in 2008 when my family went on pilgrimage. I was a part of the Iona community, staying with them. And on Wednesday nights, they let the people who were on pilgrimage there help plan the worship service for the community. And I got to do some prayer stations, and I did I don't say preaching, but I did a little teaching on that God takes till Wednesday. It's Wednesday. And God usually takes till Wednesday on a week to get you to where he wants you to be. And that's so true, that we don't need to push and wait, you know, just, okay, we're going to get there. And one of the images that I worked with during my time on Iona were like the tidal pools that they have there. And so there are lots of big rocky beaches.
Aren't they? Those tidal pools.
Yeah, they're really amazing
too.
there's stuff, you know, the colors, just like we said, the colors on Iona, when I think Scotland, I think kind of gray and misty and mountains, but there are Caribbean colors in the waters around the islands there.
Yeah.
And it's not something you, or at least the first time I went, I didn't expect that it would look like the Caribbean or the Bahamas or whatever. And
walking across the island to the Makar is just, on a good day, is just phenomenal. You know, the color of the water and everything. Yeah, the colors are just so brilliant.
And that's I think that's one of the things I said to someone on that journey was, and I've said it to myself this spring as the wildflowers, because we live in a very urban area, and it's very, you know, there's construction across the street, and it's, you know, there's trash places, but even in the weeds, there are these beautiful colors that God has created. And I said to one of the ladies on the retreat with me, I said, you know, that's how I know that there's a God, because, you know, if it just was random, there would not be all these wild little, you know, picture perfect flowers that just grow randomly. No one planted them. They're just, you know, they just happen to pop their heads out.
Well, I love to look at what's growing in the cracks. And I tell people it's not a weed, it's a garden, because it's usually not just one flower, it's half a dozen. And it's like these little gardens.
They're just beautiful. And so that's one of the things that I invite us all to do this whatever season it is where you live, is to start looking for the colors for the little surprises, like in the cracks. There's our godson is like 1, and we had a picnic on Sunday night with our community, and he is learning about blowing dandelions, you know, and he thinks now that he thinks everything's a dandelion. So he picked like the clover and was trying to blow the clover, thinking it would go, and you know, clover doesn't blow, your little clover flowers don't blow, but it was so cute to see him trying to get the buds to go. That was very cute. But to notice those things that we take for granted. You were talking about the things in the cracks. That thistle is one of the, I don't know if it's the state flower of Scotland, but it's very much a symbol of Scotland. And it's all about it's got all these thorny bits on it, but it's also a flower of healing. And I live up the street from Thistle Farms, which is an organization that works with women who are coming out of prostitution and slavery and drug addiction. And they have made paper out of thistles. And one of the women, who's a friend of mine, her name's Jennifer, and she was helping make this paper. This is several years ago. But as she washed the paper, and the process of, it had thistles in it, because the paper she got healed from a lot of the diseases that she had. And she gives the thistle the credit of being part of the healing process. So their symbol at Thistle Farms is the thistle, because they grow everywhere, but they're all about bringing healing into the world.
Well, you know, you probably don't know, but you know, when land has been desecrated, thistles are often one of the first plants to regrow. And they do, you know, they start to bring nourishment and health into the land when it's been destroyed. So if you start to see thistles, then you know that something good is happening.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. No, so I mean, I just love, it's interesting, you know, you're talking about your trip to Iona, because Tom and I have been half a dozen times. We went on our honeymoon and we went for our 25th anniversary. But I think probably our favorite trip was one time we got to be there during Holy Week. Yeah, it was profound, you know, and we went to a lot of the services, both at the bishop's house and also in the abbey. And then they, on Good Friday, they did a procession, you know, through Stations of the Cross, through the little village there. And it was just very, very moving. It really was. Well, it's a sacred place in so many ways, you know, and just from you know, the fact that everything has a name, to me, is a very sacred thing, because as they said, you know, this is what gives it meaning. This is what gives it kind of a sense of importance, you know, a sense of sacredness, I think. And so that to every other aspect of Iona.
Well, I was thinking about pilgrimage and sacredness where we live. That one of the things that that I've thought about a lot, because I believe in pilgrimage wherever you are. And not everybody gets to go to the UK or to Scotland, but we can do pilgrimage wherever we are.
Yes.
And finding out what is the history where we live, and what is the history of the place, even our neighborhoods, what was here before us. Because this is a kind of a transitional neighborhood, it used to be called Howard's Hill because Mr. Howard lived on the top. And so it became Howard's Hill. And so people who've lived here a long time know it as Howard's Hill. Then some developer decided that since the new Nashville, and we're next door to Sylvan Heights, we're now Sylvan Summit because we're this big, tall hill. But it's, to remember the people who were here before I was here, that's a big deal. And then knowing that right across, I've talked about this before, but right across, I can see from the top of the hill downtown, but I also can see North Nashville, which is where the Fisk Jubilee Singers started. And that's how we got Music City, is because the Fisk Jubilee Singers were the one, they went to see Queen Victoria to raise money for the college. And she goes, "Oh, you must be from a Music City." That's so Queen Victoria has actually labeled us Music City from the Fisk Jubilee Singers, way before country music got the label. So it's learning the history and doing pilgrimage where you live to more appreciate and what's the spiritual nature of that as well. Because for me, North Nashville was a place that you didn't go, because I grew up in South Nashville. And so it was kind of the hood, and you didn't learn about that. And I've learned about all this rich history of our city that I didn't even know about until I moved to this part of town. And I love that. I love the history that I'm learning about and appreciating the heritage that I never learned about because I'm white. And I lived in a different part of town.
Doing a pilgrimage around the cities in which we live is something important. I had friends who every time they went on vacation, they'd find out which was the oldest church.
Oh, cool.
And they'd do a pilgrimage to that church, and they'd learn about the history before they went. And this was their pilgrimage. And I thought that was a neat practice too, that you could do anywhere in the world. And you'd probably really, all of us would be enriched by that kind of a process, or even finding out where was the oldest church in the area. Maybe it no longer exists.
Right.
But, it would be really wonderful, I think, for all of us when we go places, or at home, or when we go other places, to find out about the history, the spiritual history of the place that we go to, and it may not just be the Christian history, but the spiritual history, what goes back thousands of years, in our places, because, the Native Americans have been living in many of the places that we belong to for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and to find out the spiritual history, where are the spiritually significant places for them, and things like that. I think, again, wonderful pilgrimage practice for all of us to go through. But then I love the idea of the painting of the colors, of the place too. Again, something that you don't have to be on Iona to do that.
Right. Yeah, whatever. And if you have a favorite place that you go to for vacation, or a favorite place in your neighborhood, you just go and just look at the color, take some photographs on your phone, think of the colors that are there. And it might be, and then create something. It doesn't have to be, the swatch thing. Some of the people took their kind of yardsticky thing, and they actually cut it up and created, put a circle hoop on it, so it would be more like something you could carry around or hang up. I thought that was a really cool idea too, to be more transportable, and then you can carry your vacation place with you wherever you go, or you could have it. I'm just thinking about all the ways to capture those colors. One of the women who was on our trip, she's a potter, a professional ceramics artist, and we still have our group gelled so well that we're still in a WhatsApp group, and we're sending each other what we're creating and what we're painting. And she's a ceramicist, and so she sent these beautiful pictures of these beautiful pots she created with Iona colors in them.
Oh wow!
And, they had this wooden piece, almost like a handle. So they're these eggshell. I don't know how she said these were smaller, so I'm picturing hand shaped. but it has a wooden handle and these beautiful gold and then, you know, one was like the brick color of the buildings or the stone color from all the ruins. And then one was the ocean, kind of the ocean colors. And it was just fun to see how she's taking those colors into her practice as a ceramic artist.
Oh,
And yeah,
and
really
one
good.
thing I forgot to mention is if you have any comments or anything, you know, we've only got a few minutes left here, but you can write them on the Facebook here, because I've got it here so that we can see what we're doing. Yeah, no, I think one of the things I wrote a post for a devotional, and it was different kinds of spirituality, and it was talking about summer spirituality. And I said that summer spirituality is, I think I said it's rest and pilgrimage.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, that they're the two things, you know. In fact, to me, in some ways, summer spirituality is, the summer season is more like a Sabbath than any other season of the year. And, you know, but then also pilgrimage, you know, and I think we should all think of some form of pilgrimage. And as we said, it can be at home. It doesn't have to be off somewhere else.
Well, it could even be a food pilgrimage. We're good at that as the Lewin family is really a foodie family. And so food pilgrimage is one of the things. We lived in Cincinnati for 15 years. And one of the things when we go back, you know, it hasn't happened because of COVID, but when we go to visit Cincinnati, we have these specific food places that we go. And it's not just Skyline Chili, because that's not our thing. It's we had lots of, you know, we had a great Vietnamese restaurant we liked. We had a lovely Indian restaurant that was always our place to go. Grater's ice cream, you have to go there. But so it was like a food pilgrimage of memories from favorite places that we ate, but also those folks became our friends. So to go back and see those places and eat in those places. So you might think about, you know, that's not just that kind of pilgrimage could be interesting too, to learn about, and maybe learn about the refugees that have come to your town. I posted an article on Facebook this week about it's in Montana, and they have created a kitchen. A church has opened up their kitchen in their church basement as a carry-out place, takeaway place and refugees who have moved to their town cook their whatever nationality food they have, and then they're the takeaway. So people order out, and they get to experience a whole different culture of food. And because it's so one culture in Montana, they get to experience it's like they sell out. This one lady sells out in 10 minutes time.
Yeah, I love it. That's beautiful. When you said that, I thought, yeah, when we go to Australia, one of the pilgrimages we do is having fish and chips down at Circular Quay. There's a I hope it's still there, fish and chips place right down at Circular Quay, and we buy fish and chips and we sit there watching the ferries come in and go out. And it's like a pilgrimage. It really is, you know. And those kinds of experiences are very important, I think, for us. You know,
well, it's tasty. It's the senses. It's what I always talk about, is that we remember smell is like the most intense sense, but also the tasting of things. And that reminded me, one of the people that we met at a hotel said, "Oh, if you go to Oban, you have to go to the Green Shed." And I was like, "What's the Green Shed?" He goes, "Well, it may not be really called that, but it's down at the dock. So right when you get off the train, before you get on the ferry, there's this open air."
Yes, we had it recommended to us too. And
so it's fresh, like lobster and crab and shrimp right off a boat, and they like steam the lobster right there. And we ate, you know, it was a covered, but it was raining around us, but we had this amazing lobster lunch picnic out right at the ferry dock in Oban. So if you're going ever to Scotland and you get to Oban, that's my first recommendation, is have some, or a shrimp sandwich. The shrimp crab salad sandwiches are amazing. Things you wouldn't think of eating like in America necessarily, but unless you're in Maine or Seattle, but there it was like fresh, really fresh. So that,
isn't it? Yeah,
a great food memory to add to the
Oh,
pilgrimage.
these things are so important. They really are important kind of memories. And as you said, it is like a pilgrimage to go to these places, these landmark places that somebody across the world will tell you about even. And yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful kind of a habit.
Well, I think the other beautiful thing that we can do, even if we don't travel anywhere beyond, sitting at our desks, we can do the pilgrimage from our phones, thanks to the internet, or from, to go to look at people who are creative around the world. And rather than all the news stuff that can get so hard and so bad, we need to pay attention to that and pray for that and take action as well. But in these crazy seasons that keep, the layers that keep adding, we need to take care of our souls along. And how we do that is looking at beauty and taking time to rest, like you said, and getting out of our space to go outside and be in nature, and taking many pilgrimages if we can't go on a big one. But we can do that with, looking at people's art online and books.
Yeah, that's where, kind of knowing that I was going to be talking to you about Iona this morning, I went looking for my favorite kind of meditative type of books, and this one, and it has beautiful photos of different parts of Iona, and lovely little kind of tidbit stories. And then this one was, this was really a pilgrimage he did to many different parts, looking at Celtic sites. And it was just a lovely story, but I just love that bit about the naming. And how, when we slow down in these ways enough to name things.
Okay, so you have a name for your house, right? What's the name of your house?
Mustard Seed House.
Yes. The Mustard Seed House. And you're looking for some friends to come and be part of your Mustard Seed House.
We are still looking for renters for our downstairs, for our basement apartment. Yes.
And to be a part of your community, the Mustard Seed community, right?
Yes. Yeah, and it's important to have that name for it, kind of it does. It puts down roots. And of course, we've lived here for 30 years. But it does, there's a sense of rootedness when you give something a name like that, I think.
When we moved here, so brand new house, we're the first people to live in this house. But when we first moved up here, there was nobody around it. We had this beautiful, not beautiful, but a lot across the way. We had this great sunset view. And that's really why we bought the house, because it was a great sunset view. And then there were no houses on vacant lots on either side, which now they're houses, but there weren't. And so it felt like a nest because there were trees. So we call our house the nest. And we want it to be kind of a safe place for people to come. So naming things, it does matter, and it gives it value and presence, and it kind of claims what is it. Like mustard seed has great, what is growing, what's going to grow. And the new season of mustard, I've been praying for this, because the new season of mustard seed, what's going to happen there. I'm excited to see.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, and then I think in a name, there is a sacredness too.
Oh yeah.
I think it's such a shame to hear that the developers renamed that hill.
Nashville. That's the problem with Nashville, is we're growing so fast that the old things that, those of us who grew up here value, and the landmarks, we can't drive around landmark driving very well anymore because the landmarks keep going away. Right. So, yeah.
So sad, because it shows, really it does, as he said, if we name things, we value them.
Yep.
When they have no names, they are open to desecration in many ways. They're open to being developed in
right.
a way that isn't necessarily good. So, yeah.
This is true.
Well, we could talk about a lot more, but we have run out of time.
Well, I want to show you one more thing before you go. One of the image, we were talking about the tidal pools. So this was something I drew at the beach. It was there was like a tidal pool that kind of looked like this. And the thing she had us do, Janet, the art tutor, had us do was like take a piece of paper. We didn't know where we were going. So she had us take a piece of paper and then put two other pieces of paper on it. So I glued like a piece of just it's just like this color blue paper, and then a piece of, you know, butcher paper brown, like you wrap up packages. And then as I sat at I saw the tidal pools and the rocks on Iona are all different colors, but that became kind of the tidal pool image of what's being birthed out of, you know, out of this time. And we're, like you said, we're at a new season, the beginning. I love beginnings. It's June 1st and when we're recording this, and we get to begin a whole new month. And for us in the States, it's a whole new season of summer. Some people are done with school. Some people are just about to finish with school and starting summer stuff. So take time to breathe and take time to create something and take time for rest, like Christine said. And
yeah,
find that way to pilgrimage where you are.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's a time for pilgrimage. It's a time for rest and relaxation without necessarily going a long distance. We're planning a little trip to Anacortes, which is an hour away, you know, to celebrate our 30th anniversary. And little B&B we found up there, just beautiful, dog friendly, of course, that's right on the waterfront, or on the bluff, actually, looking out over the sea, and just so restful and just a lovely place to go and to enjoy the presence of God, and, you know, to go down the beaches from there and pick up rocks. I can't resist picking up rocks.
Yeah, I have a whole bag, Christine, that I have yet to unpack from Iona. This came all the way back. So we got a lovely bag from the Wild at Art. And yes, it's filled with Iona rocks. So when I get them packaged the way I want to package them, I'll show you how I create with them.
Well, and I have mine here too, so I know what it's like. Yeah, no, I think rocks can be very significant for us. So anyway, we have run out of time, unfortunately. Oh, we've got some comments first. Let me just check on these. Oops. Thank you for this beautiful and inspirational time. Grateful for this. The old things that, you know, those of us who grew up here value in the landmarks. Sorry. Okay, just comments of thank you for this session. So thank you for mentioning that. You know, it's always nice to get a little bit of feedback, because you don't often get that. But anyway, thank you. Oh, and the next one in 2 weeks' time, Lily won't be doing it with me, June Friesen.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, for those of you that are a part of this group, the God Space Light group, you know that June posts every day faithfully, and I think we all thoroughly enjoy her reflections and her photography. So I think it'll be a delight to talk with her and discuss that and the impact it has on her life, and that it's having on our lives as well.
And she's a wonderful member of our Tuesday night Thin Place community. So that's I've gotten to know her, and she's just a special pastor and just a special person. So that'll be fun.
Well, she's one of the gems I feel that we've discovered during the COVID days.
Yes, this is
you know, and yeah, she really is. So I'm looking forward to that too. So 2 weeks, and that will be our next session. So thank you all for joining us, and hope you can join us and bring your friends for the next session.
Thanks, Christine. I hope you have an awesome day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.